Hello, hello. Today is April 16th, a Wednesday, and it is 9 p.m. And this is another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. So tonight's episode is titled Initiation. Last week was the first one, and had Brandon Spencer come on by. So that was a good guest to have, good co-host, we could say. And that one was titled Awakening, since we pretty much talked about, the first part of before you even get into doing any content. Well, first you have to wake up to what's going on in the world. And yes, we had a good conversation there about all that stuff, and had a few people in the chat with their comments and some questions. And speak of the devil himself, here we have Brandon. Just a moment. Update that link, and should be coming in any second now. Boom. There he is. Welcome aboard. How you doing?
Howdy.
Just gonna bring in Derek. Got 3 pilots today. So hey Derek, how's it going?
Bonjour, gentlemen.
What's up?
So I was saying last week's was Awakening. Had Brandon, and we talked about our awakening into eventually getting to the great work. And the first part of the great work is working on yourself, the inner work, and alchemy, all that good stuff, and how we awakened, and everything leading up to eventually getting involved in doing some of the work. And so that was a good title. I thought of that after Awakening. And so now it's Initiation. How did we get initiated? As showing some examples, some personal experience stories on how it happened for us, and that might inspire other people for them to get started somehow. So I'll let you guys start, and then when it's my turn, I'll connect to my phone and show some of my earlier notes, since I'll be going into the text route as a basic form for people. So Brandon, Derek, you guys can say whatever you want to say.
After you, sir, if you want. I don't feel privileged to take the first, I missed last week's, it's sometimes not the best hour for me at 3 a.m, but if you want to jump right into it, Brandon, if not, I could just say something, but yeah.
All right. Because Kris had mentioned, about writing things down. This is what I started doing very early on. Got a whole notebook right here. Still got notes, and I would just, I would write on all different kinds of paper. Just straight, computer paper. Because I would write on the back of my kind of like my little pay stub things from being a umpire, So
That's what I got. I got a stack of paper from bills and stuff. It's I always look at the back. Oh, is it clean? All right, I can reuse and repurpose it. Being not want to waste anything.
Literally, that's exactly what I did, and would just would watch a video. Would come across certain words. Would help write those words down. Would look them up. Would come across certain concepts. Would write it down. He'll look it up. Because this was really before I knew what the Trivium was. I was going into that process of the gathering of, going through that initiation. So I was writing things down, man, because my mind was open and it wanted to learn. So it wasn't just, watching videos and taking stuff in. I think the writing stuff down played a huge factor because doing that along with reading, it was kind of like this balancing act, for me, because hell, I had never really, like read stuff, like in my life. But once I started going through that initiation, starting to wanting to learn, and as that knowledge was coming in, because one thing that I had learned was, we are capable of learning pretty much anything we want as long as we put in the will and care. So like there is no limit on, like how much one can learn. So once I discovered that, then this big head like really wanted to get into some big books, and I just started to take in, information, and I literally would just writing stuff down. Because it was when I was writing it down, you read it kind of like in your mind. So it's kind of like you're processing it twice. And it was a way for me to kind of use the repetition, because I would always go back, to my notes, and just get it soaked in. But yeah, that was how I started one of my ways of doing the initiation. Um, and the reading part, it was PDF files for me, finding books online. Did some real physical books, but it was more like the PDF files, because like I say, this was around 2013, 2016, when there was a lot of information being brought out, put out online, and just taking in and reading, because that right there helped enhance my vocabulary. Because like I say, when I would come across words that I didn't know, words I couldn't pronounce, just look those words up, look up the etymology, look up, synonyms of what that word, means. So you can kind of expand, how your language, and, gain a more depth and respect for, her language itself and the words that we use. And yeah, it was just the whole writing things down, being able to really get it, synced in my own, psyche. Because one thing that I did is I had purged myself. Like I had took myself out of my previous environment of the oversensitilization or the overstimulation of information that was kind of like toward like the conspiracy kind of Alex Jones. Then I had like put myself in this more, true gnosis, true knowledge, to like toward consciousness. And it was a huge shift. It was a huge turning point, because that was like me, being that hermit, cut off relationships. I had to cut off people, because it was about hitting the books. And I literally like just disappeared for like 3 years, because I was, just soaking it in, man, and like was literally reading and trying to filter out as much as I could. And then I came across Chris's work, which opened up the doors. And then I started coming across other people's work, and it was like more dots, started being connected, or how the universe was, leading me. And luckily I was making the right choices to recognize those things. So that was kind of how my initiation started. But yeah, and I've got so many notes, man, like so much stuff scribbled down, so many pieces of paper. You see, hell, I had my astrotheology, like, oh man, like this just brings up good times, because this was the sacrifice right here. This was the part that people didn't see. You spending those long nights, like reading, you not going out because you want to dive into those books, man. So like this brings up a lot of good memories, but like also a lot of you know tough times, because a lot of people didn't really understand, and you really had to give up certain relationships to kind of go on that hermit, that kind of hermit path. And I don't regret it, have not one bit, because I had a thirst for knowledge. I literally would have swum across the ocean to try to obtain, have this knowledge. Hell, I would have seeked out like any like so-called death, to try to conquer it, to try to obtain this knowledge. But that was just me, man.
I can totally relate, and I got them notes to back it up, and kind of what you were getting at, and kind of chuckling to myself just because we've been there and done that and alchemized these things and healed from them, because it can be very traumatic. Going through these initiatory stages of higher awareness of what the hell is going on behind the scenes, and Dorothy and Toto, pulling the curtain back in to see, the wizard and all that stuff, and all that stuff. And the thing I was thinking about was how I was kind of like journaling along my way, and but also taking notes, and also kind of like making my little poetry writtens a little bit. It's more scribble, scrabble, but it's the catharsis that we kind of relinquish into these pages as well sometimes, and it's a very therapeutic way, and a proper process for one to learn and also integrate the information. And it's like the energy in motion of, all right, so what are we doing with it? All right, so there is action. Things are being written down, and we're going to be refining our memory of these things and our rhetoric, because we have references to these things and all. And so yeah, Brandon, I could definitely relate with that. It's just takes you back to those humble times sometimes, and just going back to the hermit, and the dedication, discipline, and time and sacrifice it takes to do these things as well. It cannot be like overstated enough sometimes. But has it hanging in regards to one's perspective, and flipping the thing with the Brandon's t-shirt, in regards to Odin, sacrificing himself upon the Yggdrasil, the tree of life, and we have to do that. We have to sacrifice ourselves upon ourselves, uh, to rid ourselves of all these falsehoods, to really reinvent ourselves, to refresh our worldview of all these things. So yeah, flipping the script on the mental gymnastics, but getting the proper exercise and all this stuff. You don't want to pull a hamstring and this and that, especially when knee-jerk reactions come into play, because you haven't gone through enough of the shadow work, if you will, when you get triggered out a little bit too much, right? We've all kind of been there to a degree and this and that. Yet how do we just kind of fall back into like, all right, so we're learning information and we're trying to have conversations sometimes with people, and they're just not on the level, or they're thinking I'm a conspiracy theorist and blah blah blah. So I'm gonna kind of hunker down and go into that hermit mode, learn the things that are kind of pertinent and in my radar, of things that are just like, that you feel that burning desire within you to a degree, right? Do you? So what, in my experience, aside from like writing things down, when I was doing my, and I was talking to Joe Murray for like 3.5 hours, just like literally half an hour before this came on, pretty much, and it was fantastic. And one of the things we covered was, it's just people need to really, if we're really trying to get the word out, there's so many different forms of human expression. We have to fall back on, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? What are you skillful in? What do you feel confident in learning more about, to actually have that skill set to, work that your art of life, your art of persuasion and communication and deliberation, or, like, all these things that, can help out for a better situation. Right. So having those things in mind. And so in like 2012, when I, had these epiphany frequency shifts and all these things, I was like, I was already kind of like taking a little bit of notes. I was really lazy on that. But what I would also do was take, timestamp screenshots of, and that's another thing. Like way back then, like YouTube was actually pretty legit. You could find like some pretty good stuff without the censorship in all these things, and like you could actually label alternative media for what it was, as it not is at all really today. So all that aside, so I had all these, uh, screenshots of, like Manly P. Hall, David Icke, yeah, that good old Carlin stuff, and Bill Hicks, and like Max Egan, all my initiatory things, and some of the Carrie Cassidy interviews way back then, and like Project Camelot. I don't know if anyways, so I would just transform some of those into sound sample snippets and lace it over beats. And I had a lot of hip hop songs that just like had a burning desire of conviction for me to, lay out tapestries. And so that's kind of the building of my channel, Awakening Mind. So that's my story. I say that to take the time to maybe, if that inspires anyone to do anything similar. There's not a whole lot of folks doing something that I'm doing. I'm not anything near like a high skilled DJ, like and that's kind of what bothers me sometimes, because there's so many better musical artists out there, yet they're not on the level where they really went down deep into the cult and integrated it, and are really having the bronze and balls to really bring that fire forth in these dire times, as Brandon says, a lot in the introductory good old howdy and all these things. So yeah, what are we paying? Spiritual currency, what are we focusing on? What are we actually trying to invest in to make positive change for the better and inspire others and motivate them to seriously do that? Kind of like the good old funnel conference as we just had, of inspiring true care to action, that generative principle beating with every heartbeat and step and breath. Possibly, maybe that's a little too much, but like, don't burn yourself out, right? But keep it light as a feather. That's all. Kris, please, yeah, thank you for having me on. Great to talk with you all.
Yeah, thanks for your stories, guys. I have some more questions. Like, so Brandon and Derek, you guys both wrote stuff. You wrote notes, and I wrote notes too. And I started with the text, but you guys didn't start with the text. So you didn't, like, your notes. It was part of, like, maybe what Derek was saying, with like as a cathartic, just to get it out on, put it somewhere. I have a lot of stuff in my stuff's all over the place. Some of it's on like printer paper where there's no lines. I like that for the, like, my flowchart stuff, and like when I make like diagrams and stuff, so there's no lines getting in the way. Then I got other stuff where it's like writing out stuff in like a 350 page notebook, and also on the computer. You can pop open a file based on like a topic, and you can, when you come across quotes in a book, you can copy them there and paste them in. You can, when you think of ideas, you can just write them in, like, just in one big note file. And then after it gets past like 500 lines, then you're like, okay, I'm going to start another one. Because when it gets too big, it gets like a little bit unmanageable. That's what I found. So I got like 8 notes files of, it's all on one line, which one line could be like a paragraph. So I got like, some files are like 600 lines of like all these paragraphs, and then they're spaced apart. I got 8 of them. That's based on taking notes and ideas I come from when I'm going through like Passio's podcasts and or other podcasts. And so And we all have this the commonality of writing it on paper. So something about the paper, it's more tactile. It's more, there's this association with memory. You'll remember things more if you're writing it out with your hands. So Brandon, when you were writing it out, you were like just trying to put it somewhere, right? Like you had ideas or good things, good thoughts, or good material that you wanted to be able to reference later. So you were putting it on paper, and that's what I do as well. And but when you got like initiated into creating content, as far as I know, it was video, right? So what brought you to like jump into the video right away, as opposed to like you know getting initiated more slowly, like I did, like with text, and then you could take your text and then you could put an audio with slides to it, and then eventually that's like a video of your audio, and or just do an audio like a podcast, and then eventually get into video. So what made you go like from your note taking and trying to put your thoughts or that good material into note form or whatever, and then into creating the content? How did that process go? Like what brought you to the video content amongst anything you could have done?
It was suffering. It was literal suffering. It was doing the whole COVID shenanigans, 2020, when I myself started to experience the effects, and there was some internal contradiction going on within me that I had to admit, and it was literally tearing me, like up apart. And that contradiction was, I had, knew what I knew about, freedom, about her morality, about, things we talk about, but I hadn't, stepped into the form of true care and right action. Kind of was, like the, helping the ones who were just taking in, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. But as the whole COVID stuff, started to happen, and you see it, right there, held in front of you, then it's like, okay, you can't run away from it, So now you have a choice to make, and if you continue to do the choice that you're making, then you are are going to, be engaged in evil even more. And that's like really what like hit me hard, is because like it was on my mind so much that I had like a nightmare, hell about it. Like when something's on my conscious like that hard, and I'm thinking about it like that hard, it eats away like at me. Like even to the point where like I'll dream, and I know okay, I need to do something. And like in that nightmare, it was kind of like a black and white dream. And it kind of reminded you of like one of the memes where you see like this collectivist, mentality, or like this collectivist farm, and like everyone's going into this, like this school or like this farm. They're going in as individuals and they're coming out as pretty much a collective group. That's kind of what their dream was. And I was going around and I was trying to, like wake people up and like, hey, don't go in there. And it was a scary, frightening dream. And I was like, something inside me snapped. I'm like, like I'm not going to continue to be that coward, because there was that contradiction. So I had, been dealing with a lot of, fear, from, speaking online. I always hated, speaking in front of people. And I just had to overcome that because I thought, honestly, slavery, being a slave and seeing everyone else enslaved mattered more to me than whatever little bullshit fucking insecurities and fears that I had, to where hell, like I had to put that like over my insecurities. And that's why I say like it was suffering, because hell, like we say, like it's the suffering part that kind of forces people, like when it's happening, like to you, then people usually don't care. And that's really what forced me to, take my notes and everything that I had been studying for like 5, 6 years, you know, to the actual video form, because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. It was building up to so much disgust because I knew that I had knew this stuff, but I was still in that 2 out of 3. You know, yeah, I knew it, felt it, but I wasn't in the form of right action. Like I wasn't in the form of putting out that information. And there was some of your work that had always stuck with me about the Trinity consciousness. Mark talked about it too. But when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are not in line, whenever you have 2 out of the 3, you're not in sync, you're not in harmony, you are not held line. And as that was going on, I knew it was that last step, that putting information out, that stepping into that next realm, stepping onto the like the true battlefield. That right there was what I finally had to do. And it really wasn't that hard to do it. Like it's just fear, fear that I had built up, from speech problems and all that stuff. Shit that hell I had to overcome. And it was that suffering that forced me to do it. Cause like I say, I probably wouldn't have been here to this day. Like I doubt I would be alive if I didn't do it. Like I probably would have blew my brains out. Like that's how much of a contradiction that I was in. That it was either fix it or yeah. Like that's how much the shit was eating me up. So there's no way that I could have lived with that for this amount of time.
Yeah, that's a good story. Good story for people to relate to, like that inner turmoil, that inner contradiction, that disunity consciousness, where uh, that I talked about it briefly in the karma part 4 of the law of freedom. You can have the complexity of karma as the action or the results of karma level 1, karma level 2, but the things that come back to you for immorality, when you get punished, when the justice comes back for the injustice you created, that's one level. But there's also that self-created karma where you have that in terms of a consequence being applied to you, but from yourself because of your inner state. So the guilt or the shame, things like that. So that can be a powerful motivator, and that's like what you had was this. It seems like the guilt of not doing anything. That's why you like get into the battlefield, do something about it.
Yep.
And like you say, the as I've mentioned before too, it's like people only care when oftentimes, and unfortunately, when the chaos ramps up and the suffering affects them, when it's personal to them, and until that point, it's that level of evil or immorality isn't personally affecting them, so their life is good enough. And then when it ramps up, then that contrast is there, that bias, the attention bias. I forget the specific bias, but one of the cognitive biases is when something changes drastically. And that's what I describe it as, like the chaos and the evil just was poking out. So our normalcy was like this, everything's supposed to be like that, and then just things got so in your face and affected a lot of people personally, so they couldn't, it's something that they paid attention to and something that affected them. So then you're more motivated when something affects you personally because it's affecting you, as opposed to just getting involved from caring more. But that's what can act as that initiation, impetus, ignition of that care within you. So you care enough to a certain point. Like my Funnel 4 presentation was all about like different levels of care, one of the last slides. And so you care enough to like start learning things, but there's still that apathy in you if you're not taking that care to the next level, like you say, that other realm, and taking what you know and doing something with it. because knowledge itself isn't power because you're not doing anything with it. So power is a force exerted in the world. So only when you're doing something with what you know does it actually become power, because it's being used in the
Yeah.
world. And yeah, that was a good experience to share. Also, like to know, like, why the video. That's what you were most comfortable with. Like, you mentioned your speech issues. That must have been like a hurdle to like get right into the video. Or even if you would have done a podcast, it would have been you wouldn't have been on video. But the writing, I went there because it was easier. Just that's what I was trying to get at before. Like, why didn't you choose writing? Why did you go directly into video? And yeah, what do you have to say about that?
Oh, cause around the time during the whole COVID shenanigans, my cousin had reached out to me. He and I have done like 2 videos. His name's Carlos. His dad was in like the rap industry, but he reached out to me like before COVID, and like we was doing the kind of video chats, and something in the back of my mind was like, hey, you had done these video chats with Carlos for like pretty much months and months, so you're already somewhat, familiar with being in front of a camera. So it was just what felt comfortable at the time. Um, and I didn't know what I was doing. And it just felt to be the most easiest thing, um, to just record yourself, because you can see yourself back and play it back and feel all those uncomfortable feelings. But it was just something that at the time you kind of just wanted to like just jump in, and have my writing skills were so dusty back then, because when I started writing on paper, I never really took it to technology till like after I started doing my presentations. But yeah, it was just that's what felt right at the time, because I was doing these video chats with Carlos during COVID. And that was the thing, like everybody was working from home, like the whole video stuff, podcasts and stuff, I was jumping. So I was like, hey, what better time than now?
Right on. Yeah, makes sense. If you're already talking with people, maybe about some of the subject matter, they're interested in it, and you're already explaining it to them, then it's pretty logical to just take that same format and put it out there for anyone to come
Yeah.
across. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, real quick, because I was just kind of reviewing a video I did around this time last year, actually. The video creator motivator type of vibe of just I kind of did that reference of, yeah, we've all kind of had these Skype calls and this and that, and so it's like, yeah, how hard can it be just translating that type of conversation to a camera? We're by yourself, but yeah, sometimes like there's all these feelings. There's sometimes the butterflies, if we're not used to it or acclimated properly, that just arise out of nowhere sometimes, just because all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, like it's an interesting thing. And yeah, it's like we got to break that fear, and just sometimes you can think about some illogical things, or something not that silly or whatever, but think about how many whack ass people out there just talking out of their ass, either running off of misinformation or disinformation, or actually paid to spew that jargon out. You know, what you're saying, if it's in line to truth, that is more golden than what the hell they're about. So there's things to keep in mind, and to try to build up that confidence, right? And then along the way, refine your rhetoric. I've recorded over 100 videos of me taking the camera out and like, I'm gonna say something, and it's kind of like off the cuff, although I had something in mind, and like it's just, you got to go with it. And even if those 100 out of, plenty of other videos that are already public, those never saw the light of day, but they still meant something and we're building towards something. So it's all about getting those reps in. And yeah, we can harken back to having those cool conversations and, kind of, if you're trying to overcome those stumbling blocks, speaking to a camera and you're just by yourself or whatever, try to have in your mind and like draw back those feelings of being in that cool comfort zone, in like, or being in the zone, of, speaking that truth stuff, with the homie or cousin Carlos, like Brandon was. And it can help one just be more relaxed, with these things. And yeah, and at the same time, like, wow, you hit record and you might have, stumbled, whatever. We can all just make a couple edits, right? We don't all have to do live streams, especially if you're kind of new to this. And going to what Brandon was saying, it's like, yeah, it took you around like 4 or 5 years of studying these things before you actually, put videos out. Is that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so, like, but what do we have today? Like the TikTokification. People have been studying this stuff for like 5 months or 5 videos or 5 days, and all of a sudden they're putting out their own content as if they got it figured out, type of shit. Sometimes there is efficiency to information, and it's a mixed bag of how people take these things in, but holy smokes. Sometimes people are just like getting way too ahead of themselves, and they need to kind of check themselves before they wreck themselves. And yeah, like, there is the trolling and all these things that come with it. And that's not to deter someone from, putting out content or whatever. But yeah, people have to, maintain their boundaries and stuff like that. And yeah, like, folks that are getting, the onslaught of whatever, or just want to shut that shit the fuck down, yeah, turn your comments off or just like forget about it, right? If you're just trying to educate people and, do your thing, then do that. If you want to do your video essays and not show your face, do that. You don't have to show your face and this and that. Just be an honest, genuine, authentic individual, right? Coming from the, hardcore intelligence.
Yeah, for sure. Um, videos like the final step, the final frontier of our content creation journey. Brandon just jumped into it. He was so used to it, but it took me a long time. So that's why I started with the text. And so anyone out there was wondering, like, how do you get started? Are you shy? Okay, I was shy. But you have that motivation. You have the fire ignited that you want to do something. You don't know where to start. So how can you start? Well, you gotta, like Derek was talking about, you gotta collate various information. So it could be from one person. You could go through Mark Passio's work. It could go through Passio and Sarion and Ike and Maxwell and Hall, and and like connect a bunch of ideas and just talk about a bunch of whatever you believe is true or whatever, and put out a bunch of stuff. And yeah, like the TikTok now is you get more views just by doing shorts, just by putting your face up there and talk for a minute, and then yeah, whatever. But you gotta do that that knowledge input grammar phase, not just watch 5 videos and think you know it all. So you can go out and talk about it, but one of the aspects that I had early on is that I wanted to have a relative degree of like certainty and confidence that what I was saying was true. And in retrospect, some of it was belief, but you gotta have that. That's like a whole other topic we can talk about there. But the so you can put out information, and part of the responsibility is, well, is what you're putting out is true. So that's why being able to discern truth from falsity, that's the whole aim of the game. the whole part of the inner work, and that's what has to be done first. I have this infographic where here it's like it starts off, outer work is low on the graph and the inner work is at the top. And as time goes by, you've done the inner work for maybe a few years, and the outer work, could have been like nothing. Could have been just like Facebook posting or whatever. But then it's going to start to cross at some point, and you're always going to do inner work, but then you're going to be doing outer work more. And until you do the inner work, you shouldn't be doing lots of outer work, because you're like a newbie, juvenile in the game, and don't have yourself developed enough. So you gotta, you weren't raised, and you gotta raise yourself, and you gotta raise yourself to a significant degree before you go putting stuff out. So you can go on forums and interact with people there, and you're sharing ideas and stuff, and that's usually one way that a lot of us start out. And like Derek was saying, you can just go put out whatever content you want, but you have this certain responsibility to at least, what are you putting out? Is it just, you go, there's all this alien stuff. Well, how do you know any of that's true? It could be true. Like, there's all this, like, these cool stories of Alex Collier and the Draconians and the Greys and Alpha Centauri and all this stuff. And I read some of that stuff, and like all that stuff's interesting. And you can go talk
Project
about
Camelot.
it. What? Yeah, Camelot and all that stuff.
Yeah, Project Camelot, yeah.
But it's people making claims of truth, and then you're going to take their claims, and then you're going to be like, oh yeah, I believe you. And then you're going to talk about it as if it's true, but you don't even know if it's true. So anyways, in the higher level of the great work, it's about putting out things that are true, especially relative to moral truth. That's the highest level, because the goal of the great work is to end evil and slavery. So if you're not going to be talking about morality at that highest level, then it's never going to happen. So there's always got to be a moral mix-in. So you got to have your truth foundation for morality there when you get into that higher level. And so you could just be creating content, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily really doing the great work. Because if it's not mixing in anything about what's right or wrong in some aspect, or the self-knowledge, having people understand things about themselves and that journey of the alchemy and the inner work, then, you're not in that level of the helping people on that first level of doing the great work within themselves, and eventually reaching that great work to repeat that process that they themselves received, and keep the chain going of influencing others to change as a magician or a wizard. So in that process of where do you start, how do you get started? So you got to have some knowledge, and you could have gone across many books and many videos and audio, and some people are like, oh, I don't know where to start. Well, here's an idea, and this is how I did it. You go through someone's content who's already put out information. In my case, it was Mark Passio. As I've said many times, the greatest single source of information for quality truths, I find, is Mark Passio. So you could go, episode 1. What does he talk about? Oh, he's talking about truth. Well, do you want to talk about truth? No. Go to episode 7, talking about the higher self or something. I don't remember if it's 7, but you could go into the methods of manipulation, tackle one of the methods of manipulation, like divide and conquer, the Hegelian dialectic, controlled opposition, other things. So let's say you start with the first episode. That's what I did. I went through like the first 10, and my first 10 or 12 articles or something were Mark Passio's information, and I like put it in my own words, maybe added some stuff, and so it was my own way of expressing it. So that's one way you could start. You go through Manly P. Hall. He's got tons of audio. You pick one that interests you, and what does he talk about in here? So you can like summarize it and just write it up. I'd say like at least 500 words. Don't go less than that, or else it's like what's that, like a 3-minute read or something. 1,000's pretty decent, and you could go bigger. I went. Mine were pretty big to start off. I was. They were pretty big articles. So if you want to start smaller, people have. They're in the whole TL, DR. Too long didn't read, so short stuff. But 500 words, 1,000, they can get through it in a few minutes. As if you just want to hook people in and get them to just go through your content. But if you want to really elaborate on something, then you're probably going to go like 1,000 plus words, 2,000, etc., to really hash out the concept and get into it and explain it more thoroughly. And that process you're probably going to learn yourself, because through teaching, that's one of the strongest ways that we learn as well. And so if you want to start, that's one way you can get started. It's really easy. Go online, look at one of the great ones who came before us, look at someone's new content, and summarize what they said, or go into it deeper, or just reiterate what they said. The point is to get more of the core quality truths about moral truth and like derivatives on self-knowledge and how we function in consciousness that can help us discern truth from falsity, things like that. To anything that gets you towards the goal of ending evil, of ending our enslavement. So all that content, putting it out there, is more for other people to potentially come across, and that can get them to learn. And that's the whole point of it. So just as something I can show here, as I got my phone here hooked up to my Droid Cam, so I don't know if it's too visible, but you can see people who've seen my presentation on speak truth into existence. Well, here was my first scribble on that, So here's my notebook. This is before I was into the computer paper. I was using this 300-page notebook, and it's just full of pages of just one thing after the other. Like, what was this one about? This one's about human to human sphere of interaction and with animals, and it's on all the pages. Like, it's double-sided, and it's just so we got, what does this say? Okay, 250. I was a liar. It wasn't 350, it was 250. So we got back to back, put on Pascal's podcast, put on some Manly PL, put on some whoever, people who talk about some good concepts. And I don't know what this is about. I got just
hit the books.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then when you come across stuff, just write it down. And you come up with these ideas, and what's this about? I don't know. I got some collapsing thing. Oh, this was this one's probably a reality processing presentation on the absolute and the relative, and how it's like a frequency, and just a bunch of stuff. This one's a wheel of, I don't know, that looks like the horoscope, astrology, astrotheology, and just like put everything that comes into your head. I mentioned that to Brandon. We talked about it at the end of the last episode off air, that you have an idea, you have an insight, you're listening to something, and it connects information, and you have an insight, and you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. All right, cool. And then you just leave it there. You're not going to remember it. You got to write all of this down. Every idea you have, when you hear someone say something useful, here's one that looks like the logic thing I had, but it's not that. Every idea you have. Here's one on our interconnection and caring more, and our compassion, expanding our level of compassion out. And so all the ideas you have, when you listen to something and it triggers something, just get writing, write it down, and then you're gonna write like a bunch of stuff out, and at the end you could end up with like a page. So sometimes I go on for like 3 pages. I would like write on, like, okay, Passio said this, and then it's like, and then after I'm like 2 or 3 pages later on just like dumping it out, and then it's there. And then if you're like looking for, here's one on consciousness, going from existence to your self perception, awareness and consciousness. And then you got all the things tied together. This one I think I made into an infographic. So when you're looking for like, okay, I want to write an article. Well, then you got this big ass notebook of like pages, and you can go through it one page at a time, or go through it and you're like planning ahead, and you're like, okay, next Saturday, oh yeah, there's this page of this thing that I did with this infographic. I could turn it into an infographic and work on that for the next week, and then put it out just as an infographic, the on the weekend. Make a post on Facebook, put it on my site, get a site, or make a video about it, describe what you did. And but if you don't get it down, then you're just relying on like your super awesome computer memory to like remember every single thought that you've ever had in your life at every moment, and be able to recall it like on the snap, like, yes, at 10:23 a.m. last Tuesday I had this thought, and now I always have it here, and I always know that it's there, and I'm going to remember it, and I'm going to, this is what I'm going to write about. No, it doesn't happen like that. You're just going to forget everything. And what happens to me when I don't, I'm like, oh, damn, that thought that I had. And then I didn't write it because I was in the car, and I was like, okay, I got to remember to write this note down. And then I don't. And then I'm like kicking myself in the ass the next day. I'm like, oh, what was that thing that I know that I liked and I
Yeah.
wanted to write about, and then I forgot to write it. But if you write it down, you're not going to be forgetting about it because it's written down. Then you can just go like, okay, yeah, it's in like around here in my notebook, and then you can talk about it. So this is how you get started. This is how you get started here. Derek's done it. Brandon's done it. I'm showing you. I've done a bunch of it. And, this is the old notebook. This is my old notebook, by the way.
Oh,
I got
shit.
another one.
Can
that
I
I've
just
gone
throw a
through.
one-liner in real quick? Because
Yeah, go ahead.
it's a good reminder for people to recognize and realize, and I'm sure people have taken notes. Yeah, sure. It's like anything you've written down, whether manually, digitally, whatever. It's like that is great material for you to use as a template, build off of, or just, kind of improvise off of to make a simple video out of just that, we don't have to like overcomplicate these things sometimes, especially if you're kind of just getting your feet wet or just kind of new to these things, right? And yeah, it's like for me doing it for over a dozen years and using different computer software programs. We all know that there's still things to refine and learn and be acclimated to. And yeah, of course there's like software updates and things like that, and like there's learning curves to all these things. So yeah, we got to be patient with ourselves. It's easy to get a tantrum over these digital dilemmas sometimes. I've been there. But yeah, anyways, that's all, Kris.
Cool. Yeah. So that was my idea for initiation on getting people to, how do you start? How do you get initiated into it rather than sitting on the bench, getting involved in the game, and get off the bench, get in the field. That was for you, Brandon.
Uh, I kind of wish I had on the full shirt, almost
Start
kind of
the
like
journey,
symbolic.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because like that's what the initiation process is supposed to be about. Is you wanting to change, you doing that leap of faith. You jumping into that unknown. You recognizing your own ignorance and wanting to change that, wanting to elevate that. Chris, when you was talking about the pretty much like you was talking about the kind of like that little thing, and I thought of like the sound wave. Then I thought of kind of like green language, but a wave, kind of almost sounds like raise if you say it, you know, like put a little tone on it. So sound wave, and then to raise consciousness. But yeah, how when you create that diagram, because that was kind of on point, how the way that you had explained it. But yeah, this whole initiation process, um, something that we all should be have going through. And one thing that I wanted to add that I forgot to say is before I had started doing this content, I never shied away when like Mark would hammer into his work about the individuals who are knowledgeable, who should be should be getting involved. I never would like turn his podcast off. Hell, when he would go on his tangents. Chris, you would even say the same thing, like in your earlier work, how you would kind of, say the same thing and try to inspire people that if you know this stuff, you need to be getting involved. I never shied away, how when y'all would say those things and I would take it in and just hear it and deal with whatever emotions, that came along with that and just experience that and not turn off the video, not make excuses for myself, and I would just be honest. Be like, yep, I know this stuff, but I'm just not there yet. I'm still in that realm of cowardice, still in that realm of fear, still in that realm of, her being scared. So I just wanted to put that, her in there.
It's like it's that sacred masculine voice of accountability as well, and like righteous indignation type of thing, like sounding the horns, like, hey, like, what are we doing, guys? And like, we need some help. Like, we need some serious fucking help. You know.
Because people will shy away from that aspect, once, you turn up the pot, people will start to shy away, get into that emotional mind control. That was something that I never did. Never. It's like, well, shit, hell, I'm just gonna, deal with it, deal with it. Sometimes you gotta man up, sometimes you gotta toughen up. Just deal with the shit.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, the battlefield, right? We got to step onto the battlefield and recognize that we're still dealing more or less in the ethers or internet, and it's like we got the S words, with the swords, right? And people aren't all that kind or polite with their words, but it's a lot less harmful than actual physical fucking altercation and things that could be a lot worse, and the worst is yet to come. So we gotta sound the horn louder and fucking louder, and you know check out what Brandon's doing. He set up a 24/7 live stream. You could do something just like that if you're not trying, if you're more technical than vocal or whatever. There's so many different ways we can have these expressions of consciousness or relaying the message to other people, or hey, like, if you're able to help donate to people that can need it, that would actually excel their efficiency and all these things, right? So yeah, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, there's contributing to the work. Even if you're
Yeah.
not necessarily going to do it yourself. Like some people have been very dedicated, like Mark Passio. They they put in a lot of time into getting the information out, and so when you donate to someone who's dedicated like that, then they can continue doing their efforts on a continual basis because they have the time, since the monetary aspect of their life is more or less being taken care of, or at least in part, depending on how many donations they get. But if you get enough, then it can be a full-time thing where it's every week or whatever, you're preparing for your next delivery of content, and you got the time to make the slides and everything, and put the information, organize it in a logical progression, and put it out. Or if people are doing an event or a seminar or a conference, then you can help out that way. Doing behind the scenes video or something, or editing video. There's a bunch of different ways where you can get involved. That's how I sort of started. Like, people who aren't that well known, but they had like a podcast or something, or they had a site, I would help them with their site or things like that. And just in the background, like as an unknown person, just helping in little ways, or making little images or something. And and then eventually, I made my own site and made my own content. But there's like all these little ways that can eke you towards that end goal that you might feel you're not ready for, and you might feel like, okay, I need to learn more. In the meantime, you can help other people. If you have more technical ability than them, you can help them in a technical capacity. Or if you're doing well for yourself monetarily, and you want to encourage other people who you value their content, then you can donate to them. Yeah, I guess that's about it for.
Here's a idea, something that I've been thinking of. We have AI is incorporated in a lot of video editing software. There's a lot of videos that can be uploaded, and you can put the closed caption into other languages. Because how natural law is pretty much only talked about in English from what I've seen. So there's a lot of content, how that can be put in Spanish, and how all of the other languages. And I know how there are people out there, who are multilingual, or put it into how some of these programs, and of course, just go back and check the closed captions, of course, make sure that they are correct. But with a lot of how the software is so it's so advanced, that shouldn't take too long how to do it, and that's something that people can start doing. Because I know there are some people out there who have taken marked videos and put them into other languages. But yeah, that's another way that people can get involved. And then there's are a lot of videos that can be transcribed into like other forms of text, and pamphlets and books. What Chris Jansen, what he knows someone who's printing out the an evil book. So that's just another means. Like if you have a certain tool and you can lend, like Kris and Derek, was saying, if you can help someone, video edit, if you are good with audio or producing, how maybe you can lend a skill there. There's a lot of stuff that's done behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't familiar with. How maybe you have a lot of tech laying around, how maybe you can donate it to certain individuals who may need a new camera, who may need a new microphone, who may need a new health device, because how this tech isn't cheap, and how you should be at some point maxing your shit out. Hell, that's what I've done. So as you progress in your craft, you should be at least wanting to upgrade. Hell, I know I've done that many times. Max out my RAM, max out my SSD, have maxed out my CPU, and then I'm like, shit, I need to freaking upgrade. But how that comes along with it. So
Yeah, and for people to, so all this is like, I guess, whetting your appetite, or getting your fingers dirty, even if you're not going to do it yourself. And that's very important, what Brandon said. Translations, obviously, you could pick Mark Passio's work, you could pick anyone's work, and if they have video, or if they have audio, then the work is almost done for you. You could take audio, you go into DaVinci or whatever program, you put the audio track, and then you just put slides up that match the what they're talking about, and then you could start creating content that way. And you don't have to necessarily write things yourself. You don't have to do audio yourself. You don't have to do video yourself. You're taking someone else's audio and you're making a video of it, and you're like adding a different way for the content to be consumed. That's more than just the audio. So it has the visual element. You could take like the translation thing is a great idea. You know, someone whose work is important, you take it and you just put the subtitles or whatever, use AI, do it yourself. Or you could mute them and then, talk over their own presentation, which has all the information, like slides or whatever. And that's been done in French for the natural law seminar by Passio. So you could do that for any language on anyone's content. And then that information, gets up there in another language. You could do it yourself. And that's like the people who do that for Mark Passio's natural law seminar. Like they're just translating every single thing that he says and making it available in another language. But then the next step is, well, you could just talk about it instead of just taking what someone else said and then, putting their volume really loud and then speaking about it. And that's like a translation of their work verbatim, but you could do your own content. It's not, that part might be just easier because it's already there and you just have to know what they're saying and then translate it. And yeah, making your own
Yeah.
is a little more involved and more difficult, but you're already almost there. So there's like all this stepwise progression of getting the first step and the second step and the third step and the fourth and the fifth. And you can keep incrementally, gradually increasing the level of complexity, the level of your involvement, the level of you putting yourself out there, and build up that confidence.
Yeah.
And that's like how
Because
I
it's
did
not
it.
gonna happen overnight. Yep, it's not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah. And yeah, just start somewhere. Like someone's got a site, or maybe they got videos, or they don't have a site or something, and you know how to make a site, and you could offer your help. Um, they do podcasts, but they don't do video. You could be like, hey, do you want to learn, your content? I really like your content. Do you want? I know how to do video editing. Well, would you like some help on putting that out? I could help. I could do it for you. I could help teach you how to do it. There's like different ways. So one of the things Derek said at the beginning was, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? So if you use that as one of your strengths, then you're already using a quality, a capacity that you have, that you already know, that you're already doing, that you're already familiar with. You already have some level of skill in doing, and you're applying it elsewhere, and trying to help the effort, to help other people, and just grow in your own process of how to be the true media, because that's one thing I mentioned in the description for the live, and I wanted to mention at the beginning, but I guess I'll mention it at the end. Check out How to Be the True Media. If you don't know if you're what is it, a Ludtard? No, a Luddite. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, or you're not very technically apt, or you're afraid of computers or don't know how they work. That was never an issue for me. Ours.
It's great for the intermediate as well. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna poo-poo it myself. I know there's a lot of great value I can learn from it, and I've been making content. Such a dirty word sometimes, but in the conscious quality context of the word, making proper content and being able to navigate the web in so many ways. Like he's a web wizard, pretty much. You're going to be learning a lot of things and life lessons along the way as well. It's not just, and it ain't no walk in the park type of thing too. And just like anything, just like you're going to pick up a sport or a new skill or a hobby, it takes time to learn these things and get acclimated to them. And the learning curve, as I mentioned, and etc. And so be it. So take your time with it, have the patience and compassion for yourself to keep that passion burning, like that eternal lamp, as far as Brandon's been evoking with that presentation. Y'all remember that one?
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times, good times.
Yeah, so real quick, because and yeah, Kris, I always appreciate your presence in the Europe and Natural Law chats and this and that, and part of the inspiration and hopefulness of that, and not the hopium aspects, but for people to speak these principles and truths in their native languages as well. It doesn't always have to be AI, of course, and that can help and make things more efficient for sure, especially if they just want to pump some things out that are already made. Especially like think about those classic online or like real life conferences, like the Granada conference, where you had a lot of folks, John Rappaport and other people, but or the Free Your Mind conferences and all these things, right? That they can be revived with some just the text or whatever, or the translation. So think about it.
Yeah, somewhere to start. Pick anywhere, dude. Just start somewhere and start that. Because it'll be like a snowball if you really do have that initial care that needs to be developed more. You pick somewhere, um, text, help other people, bunch of different things, and you build that confidence. Could be group video chats. Like some people might not have the confidence. You could get together with a bunch of people and like everyone takes their turn. You talk about a topic, and it gets you started to like break the ice on your, maybe if you're shy or if you're not familiar with how to do it and don't know how to start, and it gets you in the mojo of that content creation. It doesn't really apply for writing. It's not like you're gonna get together with like 5 people and write an article or anything, but it works for podcasts, for videos. But that's another way that people can get started, get their feet wet, and then jump in eventually at some point. But yeah, the initiation, start somewhere. You got to start somewhere and start helping other people, and then you do it yourself, or just jump right in yourself and get together with other people. And if you need that confidence boost and familiarity and all that other stuff that appeals to people to do it in a group rather than just doing it by themselves. And um, yeah, I guess we'll end it there. If you guys have anything else you want to add before we close it out.
Just gonna kind of reiterate what Chris and I, like the main focal point that we had touched upon, last week, is no matter what you create, there has to be some more truth, more philosophy, behind it. And like I said, I think this is where a lot of people are missing the mark in their teaching, and they are leaving out the moral principles that are going to lead toward freedom, and therefore they don't really know how navigate and how manifest freedom, because they don't know the inherent quality that's going to generate freedom, which is how moral behavior. So 'cause again, that's where I'm going to always shine the light, is on the moral principles and on doing the internal work. Those two aspects are the most important, because that's how we get to truth and a understanding of ourselves, and build a true world based in freedom that we probably won't ever see in this lifetime, unfortunately. But we're still trying. So, so the future generations can hopefully see it.
Yeah, and so what kind of motivation are people bearing in mind and able to keep that fire lit throughout the darkness? Like we have to think about the future generations. The whole planting a seed for a tree that we're not going to be able to profit from its fruits or whatever type of thing, but it's for the future generations and all these things. So yeah, ignition sequence start, huh? It's a really cool thumbnail you got there, Kris. And yeah, I guess in conclusion, right, with Brandon, what are you talking about? Yeah, just part of that initiation always starts from within. So yeah, the proper integration of the information and running it through the proper filtration. And did I say integration? To have a proper info station that is going to be effective to help move hearts and minds. And it seems like you have to start at the heart from yours to the other, kind of like that law of correspondence in a sense. And how are we corresponding with other people using your art of persuasion and all these things? And you can check out cool videos we've done with the one Great Work Warriors in regards to like the art of the craft. Really had fun with you guys, Brandon and others. Kris, I think you saw that, but just hey, exactly, like, and I like how you articulated that, Kris. So yeah, highlighting your qualities, and you can you really gotta focus on your strengths and have confidence in those. Take the ball and run with that, and just keep going forward with these things. And don't let the haters detract you and all these things. It's just, unfortunately, it comes with the fucking territory. And hey, it could be fucking worse because our ancestors used to be stoned to death for saying these things. So you know things to consider. And I wish you all the best out there. And for yeah, I can't see any of the live stream comments or anything like that. But thanks for anyone listening out there, whoever's active or whatever. But and also, yeah, Kris, thank you so much for just having this available for people to listen to and invite others to join on. So I hope to see others as well partake. It's open, apparently.
Yeah. Not many people this week. All the messages have been shown. Last week there was quite a good interaction. This week it's like dead. But oh well. What can you
Chris,
do?
once you started showing people everything how you was writing down, and then and then trying to influence them, and then they start realizing, man, like this is what I have to do. People are gonna be like, yeah, yeah. People are gonna be out. People are gonna be gone. Because like, man, you're telling me I have to do work. I have to write stuff down. I have to read. Yeah, people are gonna be out of the quit. So
Yeah, it's a
sadly.
good point. That effort and dedication is something that seems to be lacking, I guess, on a lot of people, and something to develop. Well, that's why the care. It's all about the care. That's what fuels it. If you if you're not motivated to do it, it's because you don't care enough. So you got to work on that, ignite that
Yeah.
flame, make it bigger, pump some
Yeah,
fuel
and
into there.
if you don't mind me saying it, it's like, how many times have you seen me coming on these live streams at like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning? Right now it's 4:20 in the morning. Hey, light it up because it's the fucking joint.
Oh shit.
Let me get to the point, because what the fuck is everyone else's excuse? I'm doing this, uh, at the risk of my health, possibly, for other people, and people need to get more comfortable outside of their comfort zones a little bit. And what are you willing to sacrifice? Right? What is driving you to do this? Get to the fucking heart of the matter sometimes. And I'm not like hound dogging anyone who's not willing to do certain things. I take things a little bit to the extreme. But at the same time, it's like we can do a little bit better, I think. And as I see myself, I can do better even at the current state that I'm at. And that's kind of, it's a positive driving force, I guess, that I just keep in my breath of life, if you will. So I'm trying to inspire, that spirit for others who are listening, to take that with you and be more active with it, I guess.
Yeah, thanks you guys for being here, for the inspiration and the motivation, talking about your stories and experience to inspire and motivate others to get them to understand, how did some people who are doing stuff, how did they start? How did that process begin? So that was the purpose of this episode of the Great Work Launchpad initiation. How did we get initiated? And inspire other people to initiate themselves. And yeah, I had something funny to say based on what Derek said the previous time we talked, but I forget what it was. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Things are good. We used to be stoned to death and everything, and now we're not. So our level of slavery is pretty good. So in the end, if this is what slavery's like, then shit, fuck, we're well off. Why bother doing the great work at all? This is pretty good. This is some comfy shit we got here. We don't need to do anything. So I'm just kidding, obviously. So yes, things are pretty good. We're not being burned at the stake. Things have been worse, and in some ways, and things are worse now in some other ways. And we're going back downhill. I've said that before. History's been going like shit, and then a little bit better, and then shit, and then like a little bit better, and now we're turning back down to that shit path. We're going uphill, and now looks like they're going back downhill. So yeah, thanks again, guys. Maybe see you next week. Maybe I'll have I don't know what the next one will be, if there's episode 3, what the topic will be, or if I'll have Law of Freedom part 5, Karma part 2, Karma something, another part on the Karma. I've been taking it easy, lazy since pumping out those first 4, and yeah, gotta get back to more dedication on doing those, finishing up those slides. That's why these episodes have been easier to do, more just talking about stuff, less preparation and work to get as opposed to a presentation with slides and information I gotta formalize. So yeah, we'll see what I'll do next week, and probably see you guys back around on the flip side. So thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you coming by, being some co-hosts. Great job. Thanks for sharing your experiences and everything.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good evening.